Welcome back to the Daily Bible Breakdown. Today we're moving into the book of Exodus and we'll be discussing just chapters 1 and 2. The very beginning of Exodus chapter 1 gives us a basic recap of what happened at the very end of Genesis with the death of Joseph. And then about 275 years pass between that verse and the next one, where we learn that the children of Israel prospered exceedingly in the land of Egypt and had grown to great numbers. The estimates are somewhere around 2 million. And eventually a Pharaoh came to power who did not know or honor the legacy of Joseph and his family. And he felt threatened by the Israelites and decided that he was going to treat them as slaves and force them to build the great monuments to the pharaohs. He thought this would keep them in their place and keep them from revolting, but unfortunately they just kept on growing and prospering and multiplying. So he went to more extreme measures, deciding that he would instruct the midwives to kill all the male children. But the midwives feared God and would not do that, and so they continued to prosper. Ultimately, his instructions were that every male child born from the Israelites would be thrown into the river. When we get to chapter 2, that's where we meet Moses. Moses' parents hid him for 3 months for fear of what Pharaoh had decreed would happen to all the male children. But they knew they couldn't hide him forever. And so they decided that they would put him into a basket safely, send him down the river, hoping that he would be discovered and cared for. And that's exactly what happened. He was actually discovered by Pharaoh's daughter, the princess, and she immediately adored the child and named him Moses. But she needed to find someone to nurse and care for the child during the weaning years, and in God's providence, it actually ended up being Moses' own mother who had that privilege. Moses ended up growing up in the palace as Egyptian royalty, but one day, discovering what was happening to his people, he couldn't handle it any longer. He saw one of the Egyptian overseers beating an Israelite slave, and so he lashed out in anger and ended up killing that overseer. And then, because Pharaoh was now seeking for his life, he had to flee. This is where we find Moses going out into the wilderness of Midian, where he would spend the next 40 years of his life as a shepherd. But that's also where he met his wife, Zipporah, and her father, Jethro, who would become important characters in his life moving forward. So at the end of chapter 2, Moses is living in the desert, and we've already gotten acquainted with one of his fatal flaws that will torment him moving forward, and that is his anger. But we'll see in the coming chapters how God will use him even in spite of those flaws. That's all the time we have for today's Daily Bible Breakdown, and we'll see you tomorrow.